Budget-friendly rye whiskey options, but which rye should you buy? Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, today we're going to be taking a look at two different rye whiskies, both of which are relatively available in the UK for around the same price, but they come with very different amounts of rye in each of them. We'll be kicking off with Sazerac Rye. This is a Buffalo Trace product, and here in the UK at least it comes in at 45% ABV, and I think that is actually a standard that stays over in the US, unlike the original Buffalo Trace. This though is a relatively low rye heavy rye, which is difficult to say, I've recorded that twice now, given that it is only 51% rye, and that's exactly what it needs to be considered a rye whiskey. I do though need to point out that when it comes to Buffalo Trace mash bills, everything is always just speculative and not definitive, but people are pretty confident. Now you may notice this bottle has had some hammer, and on the back of this bottle it says, "This rye whiskey is the perfect choice to make the Sazerac cocktail America's first cocktail." Well, the reason that this has been hammered isn't because of that cocktail, but it is because a rye old-fashioned is pretty tasty, and yeah, that's what happened to this over the festive period a few months ago. And up against it is going to be Bulleit Rye. Now Bulleit, the regular bourbon, is already quite a rye heavy bourbon, probably not all that different really from the Sazerac Rye, so that might actually have been a better one to put it up against, but this is a whopping 95% rye, so almost entirely rye. 95% rye, 5% malted barley, and the Sazerac, as I already said, 51% rye but 39% corn and 10% barley, so very different mash bills. The Bulleit is coming in at 45% as well, so this is a very head-to-head test really to find out, well, how much rye is too much rye. Just before we crack these open, a quick look at the bottles. The Sazerac one is beautiful. I mean, it's massive, it's really tall, it like barely fits on the screen unless I hold it quite far back, but a little close up, I mean, it is a lovely looking thing. Looks very nice on your shelf, very elegant, very kind of, yeah, early 1900s America, but yeah, a fine looking thing. And then the Bulleit, which, well, let's be honest, it looks like a bottle of Bulleit. It's kind of medicine bottle style, as all of theirs are. I do like their thing. They've always got a squiffy label because they're hand labeled, and they pretty sure they put it on there on the wonk on purpose, but looks like pretty much any other bottle of Bulleit, except of course it's got a green label and it says Bulleit 95 Rye. Bit disappointing. Right, a note for all whiskey producers. Whatever it is that Bulleit use to seal their caps, use that. That is the easiest thing I've ever had to get off the top of a whiskey bottle there. And that's a fun sound. Right then, in the glasses, they are pretty similar if I'm honest. Both kind of golden, or excuse me, golden syrupy kind of hue to them. The Sazerac is a touch darker, a little bit more orange hued, but yeah, pretty level pegging overall. Sazerac on the nose, still very spicy despite being a relatively low, or a very low rye content rye whiskey. The amount of times I'm going to say rye, and this is getting a bit ridiculous, but you get the idea. To say how little of it is in it, it is really still very pokey, very spicy. Does come across sweet though, sweet and spicy. It's got a bit of a caramelized citrus peel. I feel like I'm using that a lot in all my reviews at the minute, caramelized citrus peel, whether it's whiskey or beer. I don't know why that is. Bit syrupy, it's proper like earthy heat, like not chilies, like ginger I guess and stuff like that. It's got that slight earthy note to it. Very nice though. And then onto the Bulleit. I'm expecting big things here. 95% rye. I've never tried this before. Of course, I have only just opened this bottle, so that might be why, but it is quite, in fact, a lot closed off compared to the Sazerac. Much more deep, dark fruit. Got a creaminess, reminding me a little bit of a creme brulee. It's a bit Black Forest Gatto-y in terms of the fruit. And it's got a really interesting dark note to it. A bit kind of like barky, tree bark, a little bit leathery perhaps, although it smells like old things, like old leather-bound books. Interesting, really interesting. I was expecting that to be heaps spicy. Of course, not all of the spice can come from the rye, but yeah, with it being 95%, I was expecting real prickly note there. Right then, what shall we try first? Let's go for the Sazerac. Right then. Cheers. Oh, hot, sweet, fruity, spicy. It actually feels hot on the palate, like spiced, as in not like, it's not really a boozy hit. It's quite, in fact, it's very sweet, caramelly, definitely a bit of a barrel note in there. There's a tiny savoury note. It's like mulling around with the sweetness. I don't know. My mum was going to like coated pretzels, but it's not quite that biscuity and it's not really chocolatey. It's more like those sweet peanuts you get at Christmas time, peanut brittle, that kind of thing. But the fruit note in that is what really, really kicks it off. Big, ripe, fresh, sweet orange note. I feel like I'm getting a bit of plum out of it as well, weirdly. Interesting. Interesting. Very nice though, very nice. And on to then the Bulleit. I am pretty excited for this. I'm a big fan of the regular Bulleit. I know not everyone is, but yeah, I'm a big fan. Cheers. Instantly obvious it's less thick, less syrupy, quite toasty actually. It is hot, but not as hot as the Sazerac was, at least in this experience. It's predominantly spicy notes up front. Say they weren't very apparent on the nose. Very peppery, maybe a hint of cinnamon, something like that. Festive spice. Bit reserved, being a little bit secretive. And let's be honest, that probably is because it's a newly opened bottle, but I'm kind of digging that. It's like, it's not so big, but it's sweet enough, but it's not too sweet. Definitely got some savoury notes kicking around in there. Okay, now I think I'm going mad, but I just got like a hint of like watermelon pith, which is the most obscure thing to pick out. I don't believe my palate is really that good, but yeah, that's exactly what that last sip reminded me of. Absolutely bizarre. Finish on it though, still quite spicy, a little bit sweet. It's more like those festive spices. Not sure about the ginger, but definitely cinnamon forward. It's got a little bit of barrel char again, like it's a little bit bonfirey on the aftertaste, not so much on the palate, but yeah. Also a cracking dram. I am properly enjoying both of these fully. Right, let me go back to the Sazerac just to cross compare. Undoubtedly bigger, sweeter, much closer to a bourbon, but it is hotter. Like, I don't know if anyone else has found this, but significantly hotter. Like, it's much more impactful as soon as it hits your palate. It's fruitier, it's got more notes, this, but I feel like it maybe does lack just a little bit of depth. Meanwhile, the Bulleit feels almost the opposite. Dark, rich, depthy. That sip was hotter though, interestingly. Both of these quite hot, is all I can really tell you. And it has just got some darker, richer, depthier, leathery barrel notes kind of dipping around in the back there. What I'm going to say is, for who should buy these? Now, price-wise, both between 30 and 40 quid in the UK in general. That's definite for the Bulleit, although not always available from supermarkets and stuff. It's normally a whiskey shop kind of purchase, although I am pretty confident you can get it on Amazon if you're being lazy. And the Sazerac, well, available in just as many places, if not a few more. I know Tesco have started stocking this, and it's like 34 quid from Tesco, which also is an absolute steal. Now, outside of the supermarkets, the Sazerac tends to retail a little bit higher, kind of 45, anywhere up to 60, whereas the Bulleit very much in that 30 to 40 region, but both are very enjoyable. The Sazerac, well, it has better mouthfeel and it's sweeter, and it will definitely appeal, I think, to more people. Definitely, if you're new to whiskey, the Sazerac is probably the way to go. If you're looking for something to diversify your collection, well, actually, that Bulleit is a stunning option to do so. I'd be really interested to pitch this head-to-head against the original Bulleit to see exactly how much they differ. It is a lot, but yeah, again, a side-by-side test will really, truly tell you all the details. For me, I don't know if I'll buy another bottle of Sazerac. Not because it's not good, because it is really, really good, but it's almost a bit too close to a bourbon for it to feel like, actually, I'm going to get something significantly different. And, well, it sits around a similar price to Eagle Rare, and for me personally, I'd rather drink that. But this is a bit more fruity, a bit more sweet, a bit more, maybe even more easily accessible than the Eagle Rare is for some people. So it's definitely worth a go. But yeah, for me, the Bulleit is the moody option, the sit down and think alternative, and yeah, very, very rye heavy. But I'll be honest, on the flip side, if I wasn't definitely going to be in the mood for a rye, I'd rather drink the Sazerac. But that's only because it doesn't taste all that much like a rye. And if you're going to go proper down that rye, keep saying the word rye, it's starting to get very repetitive. But if you're going down that rye route, yeah, the Bulleit is definitely something a little bit more acute. Maybe less production quality on it. I say it doesn't seem as thick, maybe not as aged, but the flavours are much more breadthy, much more varied. They're a little bit mellow in this example I've just had. I think that'll open up with time, but there's a bigger range of flavour and it's not all just kind of sweet niceties like it is in the Sazerac. And hopefully, now I've done rambling, that might help you decide which one to buy, because to be honest, that really is all I've got to say about them. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you would be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.